Okay, let's get started at the really fun parts of all this. This is where we get to start looking at ways to build our soil. Now, as you can see there, that's some pretty decent soil. It's got a lot of nodules in it, earthworms, organic matter, so forth. So that's pretty good. Main thing you want to look for and want to nurture in your soil is your mycorrhizal fungi. Let me tell you why. Mycorrhizal fungi actually grows into that plant and becomes a part of that plant's roots, and then spreads out these very thin fibers which they can manipulate even through compaction soil and get to minerals and moisture deeper in the soil and transport that back to the root. So what's it all do for it? Well, it's extending the root, improves the aggregation stability in the soil because it clumps the smaller pieces together that the bacteria put together and groups them into larger clumps, builds your soil's carbon, improves water use efficiency, increases the efficiency of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Okay, now, one thing I want to forewarn you about: if you are using synthetic fertilizers, phosphorus will kill your mycorrhizal fungi. Now, what do you do when you walk out into this? How do we go from that, into living soil? Well, here's the basic tenets of it. No or minimal tillage. Stay off of that stuff with the discs. When you go through this soil and fluff it up like that, you're actually killing the very bacteria that can keep your soil alive. You always keep armor on the soil. You don't leave it exposed like this. Temperatures in soil, let's say on a 100-degree day, okay? If it's covered with cover, it's probably going to be around 70 degrees soil temperature. But at 100 degrees, and at 70 degrees, 100% of the moisture is going for plant growth. At 100 degrees, only 15% goes to plant growth. At 130 degrees, none of it goes to plant growth. And at 140 degrees, you've just wiped out your bacteria in your soil. All right, so keep that in mind. If you're using compost and so forth and got your soil full of bacteria, leave it uncovered. Let the sun get on it. Your bacteria is now gone. Waste of time and money, isn't it? Biodiversity is the important factor in this, not only above but also below ground. You have to have that biodiversity. All these plants, if you go out and just plant a rye field, it is not going to be as stable as a multi-crop field as far as a wide diversity. You want to split these things up. Now, I'm not going to give you particulars on it because every region is going to be different. Different plants grow best in different areas. That's where you're going to have to go out and do a little research on what do I want to put out there. And you're going to have to play with it, okay? You may try something and it worked great, or you may try something and go, that didn't work worth the hoot, let me go on to something else. It's important to experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. You're going to fail at some things, and other things you're going to do great with. You go with the greats and kind of walk away from the failures. But biodiversity is very important. A lot of broadleaves, radishes, things of this nature go into your mix so that you have good forage. So, and I see a lot of people, they'll go out and throw out some rye and clover, and they call it a pasture. It's not. Your cattle are not going to put on the kind of weight that you're going to want them to. And you're going to want that livestock out in those pastures. And that way you can also knock it down and plant crops if you want to go into row crops. Use flowering plants. Look for a few of the flowering plants. You can either put them around the borders, sunflowers, any kind of flowering plant that's going to attract beneficial insects into your fields. You want pollinators being drawn in, then you need to have something blooming out there that's going to draw them into those fields. So without that kind of diversity out there to where you've got enough flowering things to keep your pollinators coming in, keep your beneficial insects coming in, you're going to end up with a pest problem. Okay? Like they say, for every predator insect that's going to damage your crop, there's 1,000 of them that are beneficial. You want to create the home for the beneficials. If you're doing that, then you're going to be successful at it. Okay? You're going to have a very, very limited pest load. You're going to have good pollination on any row crop or any crop you put in there, and things of this nature. Make sure you have some flowering plants in your mixes. When I was looking at some of these row crop fields, they're going anywhere from 5 inches, maybe sometimes 3. They have roots. They have that's where their fertilizer's laying. Might get down as deep as a foot. Here you're seeing a cutaway on a regenerative agriculture, and I think that's a barley crop he's got in there. And as you can see, that soil has been coming back to life. It's probably got a good 5, maybe even 6 foot worth of living soil. And if you look below it, you can see that biology is now working on all that compaction below. That's how we fix our water cycle, folks. That's how you have a drought-resistant crops. You have to have that depth in living soil. We have screwed up our water table and everything else by this, tillage and things of this nature. If you don't have soil like that, you know that you're needing to do some work on it. Because until you start seeing, you're going to start off with that first top layer just a few inches down, and you build from there. Keep the biology alive, keep the plants on top diverse, and before long, that's the kind of soil you're going to have. And it's going to be fertile. You won't need any added inputs. Then the one thing I want to talk about a little bit here is to manage your livestock. Overgrazing is almost as bad as tillage as far as things like washing nutrients out of the ground, not retaining water, things of this nature. If you hadn't seen that little water test, go back and take a look. You want to get your grass, let's say it is if you put in a type of grass that's going to grow the leaf part of it, not necessarily the stem, but the leaf part of it. If it grows to a foot, you don't want those cattle taken off any more than about 6 inches. Okay? And you want to get them off that paddock at that point. You don't want them chewing this stuff down to where it's 2-3 inches off the ground. Bad deal, and you see it everywhere. Drive around, look at some pastures. You're going to see a lot of it. It takes a long time for that grass to recover. It does damage to the root structure because it quits growing roots to grow grass blades because it needs that photosynthesis. So you want that turnaround to be very quick, get those roots back to growing and feeding and taking that biology deeper and deeper into your soil. So, see how that works? Joe Salton said it best. You have infant grass, which is short. You have teenage grass, it's about half the size of an adult. And then you have adult grass. You put them on as adult grass, take them off when it hits adolescent size. So know what your concerns are for your property. This is going to be very important to you, is to sit down and start looking at, and you're not going to be able to do them all at once if you've got like row crop land. You're going to have to kind of prioritize. Where do I start? How do I want to go with this? And I'll get into that here in just a second. When I'm looking at resources that you want to bring onto your land, it would be such things as how do I build, what do I need to do to build my soil aggregation? How do I go about getting soil armor? How do I improve my water cycle? That's a kind of time constraint. Building organic matter, nutrient cycling, adjusting your carbon and nitrogen retention. Others you might have is, diversity of crops. How do you go about that? Pest management, enhance your pollinators, wildlife feed for in the winter, and livestock integration. All these things come into play. So, as far as building your soil, that can be done with good compost and compost teas. Get that down there, put it on your soil, make sure that you're in good shape. Get that biology working. And compost, both hot and cold compost, where you get a good fungal growth going out there. And that will start bringing your soil to life, get the biology going. As far as your soil armor, put in either a crop like rye or barley, something like that. And first year, knock that down, just roll it down, leave it down. Things like that is how you go about it. As far as what to plant to get pollinators in, things of this nature, that you're going to have to figure out for your local area. As far as, like if you're wanting to improve your water integration onto your land, like I said, I'm a big fan of the daikon radishes, but you can go turnips also. And there's assorted plants that have a real deep roots, large root structure. These are all things that you can do to start answering these resources. What you need to do is get out there and see what you got in your soil. Dig around out there. You may have some biology going. You may be one of the lucky ones. But if you're dealing with old row crop, wouldn't look for it. You're going to have to build it up from scratch. So you're wanting to go with a hardy plant that can pretty much fend for itself. But high quality compost and compost tea, that'd be the way to start. Because with those, you're putting the biology that you need, the soil, back in there. From there, it's just keep it fed. And I'll probably be going into these a little deeper in future videos. But this is Rich, Tennessee Homestead. Hope this finds you well. You're having a good week. And you all have a really, really great day.